Kebechet and the art of sacred grief, an ancient path through death, sorrow, and stillness. There are some names that disappear not because they were never important, but because they held too much power. Kebechet is one of those names. She lingers in the margins of ancient texts, rarely spoken aloud, rarely honored. A daughter of Anubis, her role was quiet. She did not judge the soul. She did not weigh the heart. She did not guard the gates of the underworld. She simply brought water, cool, sacred water. She offered refreshment to the dead and purification to the living. She brought peace to what had been touched by grief, decay, and sorrow, and so she was called she who refreshes the weary ones. In ancient Egypt, death was not feared in the way it often is now. It was seen as a continuation, a crossing over, a process that required as much care as birth. The soul did not leap immediately from body to afterlife. It moved slowly, tenderly, through rituals, through remembrance, through purification. And in that slow passage, Kebechet was present. She did not appear in dramatic myths or triumphant hymns. She was not carved on the walls of grand temples, but she was there in practice, in the acts of tending, in the small sacred gestures that helped the soul find its way. She was in the water poured over a cooling body, in the oils rubbed into lifeless skin, in the soft cloth held by trembling hands. She was the stillness after the wail, the sigh after the scream, the cool cloth against a burning forehead, the scent of herbs and myrrh that rise when flesh begins to fall away. To understand Kebechet is to understand the deep tenderness that can exist in the presence of death. She is not about fear. She is not about punishment. She is about care, about the love that continues even when life has ended, about the sacredness of those moments we rarely speak of. The moments after, the moments when grief is raw and real and present. What would it mean to invite her back now? What would it mean to remember her, not only as an ancient goddess, but as a presence that still lingers, in hospitals, in hospice rooms, in bedrooms where a final breath is taken? What would it mean to see her in the people who sit vigil, in those who wash the body, in those who cry alone in the middle of the night? Qebechet is a reminder that grief is not something to hide. It is not a weakness to overcome. It is a holy part of the human journey. And purification is not about punishment or shame. It is about clearing space, making room for breath, making room for life to begin again. The waters of Qebechet are not floods that destroy. They are not rivers that drown. They arrive like tears that finally fall, like the moment the numbness lifts and the sorrow can be named, like the first sip of water after long thirst, like the breath that says, "I am still here." She comes in moments of stillness. She comes in silence. She comes when the loudness of the world has been stripped away and all that remains is truth. She does not speak loudly. She does not force her presence. But when she is there, you feel it. A soft cooling, a quiet clearing, a return to yourself. In the presence of Qebechet, we remember that death is not only an end. It is also a mirror. It shows us what we loved, what we lost, what we still hold inside us. And grief, when tended to with sacred care, can become a passageway to transformation. Let this be a reawakening. Let this be a remembering. Let this be a return to the feminine face of purification. Qebechet waits not in the heavens but in the quiet room where death has passed and mourning has begun. She waits beside the body, beside the bed, beside the ones who hold their breath because they do not know how to grieve. She waits beside the woman who brings the bowl of water. She waits beside the man who cannot cry but feels everything. She waits with water. She waits with love. She waits for us to see her again. Let this book be a vessel for that, seeing. Let it be a slow unfolding. Let it be a sacred return to the waters of Qebechet. To understand Qebechet, we must begin with her lineage. She is the daughter of Anubis, the jackal-headed god of embalming, protector of tombs, and guardian of the dead. In Egyptian cosmology, Anubis held great responsibility. He prepared the body, he weighed the heart, he walked with the soul as it began its journey through the underworld. He was not a god of judgment, but of process. He ensured that the transition from life to death was orderly, respectful, and sacred. And beside him quietly stood Qebechet. She was not his assistant. She was not his shadow. She was his daughter, divine in her own right. While Anubis handled the external, the rituals, the measurements, the weighing of the soul, Qebechet brought something just as essential. She brought refreshment. She brought cleansing. She brought the sacred water that purified what could not be preserved. Where her father guarded the boundary between life and death, she walked along the edge of sorrow. She was the one who made grief bearable. She was the one who tended to the emotional residue, the unseen pain, the weariness that no ritual could erase. She was the feminine face of passage. She was the gentle hand in the dark. She was the answer to the question no one dared to ask: who cares for the mourners? Who soothes the soul in its rawest hour? As daughter of the jackal god, Kebechet was born from the union of death and tenderness. She carried the sacred wisdom of the tomb, but also the softness of love. She knew how to honor what had ended without rushing toward what would come next. She did not demand transcendence. She allowed space for sorrow, and in doing so she embodied something rare. She became the goddess of grief work, not grief itself, but the sacred tending that follows it. The washing, the anointing, the holding, the gentle preparation of both body and spirit. To be her daughter meant to serve without praise, to show up in the hardest places, to pour the water that cleanses the wounds no one can see. This is not a role our world easily recognizes, but in ancient Egypt it was holy. In a culture that valued ritual and balance, Qebechet stood as a bridge between function and feeling. She reminded the embalmers that death was not just a technical event, it was emotional, spiritual, human, and those left behind needed care just as much as the body did. There is something powerful in remembering that even Anubis, the great guide of the dead, was not alone. He had a daughter, he had help, he had softness beside his strength, he had water beside his stone. This divine relationship is more than myth. It is a mirror. It reflects the way we too must move through death and loss, with structure, yes, but also with gentleness, with roles, but also with feeling, with knowledge, but also with grace. Kebechet teaches us that we do not have to carry sorrow alone, that even in the realm of gods there is partnership, there is tenderness, there is a feminine presence that makes the unbearable slightly more bearable. To call on her now is to remember that grief work is sacred work, that preparation is holy, that softness belongs in every place where death has touched life. She is not here to erase sorrow. She is here to hold it, and sometimes that is the greatest gift of all. Her name was more than a title, it was a promise. She who refreshes the weary ones. This is how the ancient Egyptians spoke of Kebechet, a name not shouted in prayer, but whispered in reverence. A name that recognized not power, not conquest, but care. To be weary is not simply to be tired, it is to be emptied, to have carried something heavy for too long, to feel hollowed by grief, worn by waiting, stretched beyond your strength. Weary is the word we reach for when exhausted does not capture what we mean. It is the ache that rests in the bones, the fog that fills the heart, the quiet pull toward nothingness. And it is in that state, not when we are strong, not when we are whole, but when we are weary, that Qebechet arrives. She does not come with instructions, she does not demand transformation, she brings water, cool, clean, gentle. She brings rest, she brings presence. She knows that when sorrow has stripped us bare, we do not need to be fixed, we need to be refreshed. The idea of divine refreshment may seem too soft to matter. In a world that values solutions and speed, what use is water poured into invisible wounds? But sacred traditions have always known the truth. Healing is not always loud. Sometimes it is the quiet touch, the gentle return, the way grief is witnessed without being rushed away. Kebechet was not the one who made final decisions. She was not the one who weighed the heart against the feather. She was the one who came before, the one who helped the soul feel ready, the one who gave breath back to what had been crushed. She prepared, she purified, she calmed the weariness that clung to the spirit like dust. This role is not dramatic, but it is essential. Every grieving person knows that moment when the shock fades and the weight begins, the moment when the house is quiet, the visitor's gone, and the absence becomes real. In that space, Kebechet lives, not to solve, but to stay, not to push forward, but to let the soul settle. She comes without urgency. She comes without judgment. She does not ask you to explain your sadness. She does not measure how long you have mourned. She simply brings water and waits with you until you feel the first hint of your breath returning. To refresh is not to erase. It is not to forget. It is to offer strength in the smallest way. It is to give back just enough life for the next moment. That is why her waters matter. That is why her name is sacred. She is the goddess for the ones who cannot carry themselves right now. The ones who sit with heads in hands, the ones who speak only in sighs, the ones who ache for what cannot be undone. And still she comes. She who refreshes the weary ones does not ask for offerings. She does not demand faith. She brings her gift freely. She brings it because she knows the terrain of grief. She has walked it too. She carries the quiet power of someone who has never looked away. If you have ever felt broken open by sorrow, if you have ever reached a place where even prayer feels too far, this chapter is for you. Let her name rest on your lips. Let her presence rise in your spirit. Let her waters find you in the silence. She will not hurry you. She will not tell you to move on. She will simply be with you, and that is holy. We live in a world that often fears the body. We are taught to separate the physical from the spiritual, to value the soul but hide the mess of flesh. Yet in ancient rites, especially those surrounding death, the body was not seen as a burden. It was seen as sacred. Every part of it, every fluid. Kebechet's presence reminds us of this truth. She was not only a goddess of water, she was a goddess of purification through sacred substance. Her association with embalming fluid is not clinical, it is spiritual. It speaks to a deeper understanding. Certain fluids are not just of the body, but of the soul. They carry memory. They carry transformation. The ancients knew this. They honored the fluids that emerge in life and death, not with disgust, but with reverence. Blood, the first and final river. It begins in the womb. It ends on the battlefield, the birthing bed, the final breath. Blood is not shameful. It is a thread that ties generations together. It is the pulse of lineage. It is the story of what we survived. Tears, the water of emotion. Tears are not weakness. They are holy messengers. They speak when words fail. They cleanse not just the eyes, but the heart. Every culture has stories of weeping women who turned sorrow into rivers. Tears are part of grief's vocabulary. They are Kebechet's language. Breast milk, the first nourishment, a sacred fluid of life and bonding. Even if not all are mothers, this image carries weight. The body gives from itself to sustain another. In death, it reminds us of our beginning, of the care we once received, of the need to be held and fed, not only physically but emotionally. Embalming fluid, often overlooked, was once sacred. It was not only meant to preserve, it was meant to honor. The oils and balms applied to the body carried ritual significance. They were prayers in liquid form. Scents of cedar, myrrh, and lotus did more than hide decay. They signaled that this person mattered, that even in death, care would continue. And then there is water, the simplest, most profound. Water carries everything. It holds memory, it heals, it blesses, it purifies without stripping away essence. It is the element that connects earth to sky, breath to blood, life to spirit. In the presence of Kebechet, all these fluids are seen as part of a sacred continuum. They do not need to be hidden. They are not unclean. They are thresholds. They are teachers. They are part of the story the soul carries across the veil. We may live in a culture that sanitizes death. We cover the body. We avoid the scent. We push grief into corners. But Qebechet reminds us of another way, a way in which the body is honored, not denied, a way in which fluid is not mess, but medicine. What if we allowed ourselves to return to that wisdom? What if we could see our own tears as sacred? What if the blood we shed, whether from birth, from pain, or from loss, was not something to be hidden, but something to be held gently? What if the fluids that emerge in love, in grief, and in letting go were understood as part of something holy? Kebechet does not purify by erasing. She purifies by blessing. She does not ask the body to become something else. She affirms what it is, sacred, human, full of memory, full of presence. To walk with her is to remember that everything the body gives, every drop, every tear, every breath, can become part of the ritual. Not because it is clean, but because it is real. This is the wisdom that has been forgotten. This is the holiness that still waits to be remembered. And it begins with water. It begins with presence. It begins with the sacredness of what flows. Symbols speak when words fall short. They are the language of the soul, the way the sacred reveals itself without explanation. And in the symbols of Kebechet, we find a quiet, powerful story. She is most often depicted as a serpent, sometimes as a woman with a serpent's head. At other times, she is shown with a jar atop her head, the vessel of purification fluid, the sacred oils used in embalming. Together, the serpent and the jar tell us who she is. Together, they show us how she works. The serpent is one of the oldest symbols of transformation. It sheds its skin, it moves close to the ground, it knows the terrain of death and rebirth. In many traditions, the serpent represents wisdom, healing, and sacred knowledge. In some, it is feared, in others, it is revered, but always it is powerful. For Kebechet, the serpent is not a symbol of danger. It is a symbol of life cycling through itself. It is the rhythm of endings that lead to beginnings. It is the reminder that change is not the enemy, it is the path. The serpent also lives close to the earth. It does not rise high or escape upward. It stays grounded. It moves in silence. It listens. In this way, Qebechet is not a goddess of distant light. She is a goddess of the soil, of the tomb, of the grief that presses close to the skin. She moves where sorrow lives. She is not afraid of what is heavy. And then there is the jar, a simple vessel, often overlooked. Yet in the jar rests the power of her work. It holds the balm, the fluid, the sacred essence of purification. The jar does not demand attention. It exists to carry what heals. It exists to be poured. To carry a jar is to carry care. It is to come prepared. It is to arrive in the presence of pain not with words or judgments, but with something that soothes. There is something deeply feminine in this image. The jar as womb. The jar as memory. The jar as container of sacred grief. Kebechet does not spill it. She does not waste it. She pours it with intention. She anoints what has been wounded. She blesses what has been silenced. She tends to what others have turned away from. Together, the serpent and the jar form a sacred pair. One moves, the other holds. One sheds, the other gathers. One carries transformation, the other carries healing. To imagine Kebechet is to imagine this balance, movement and stillness, shedding and soothing. She arrives not as a warrior, not as a queen, but as a quiet presence who understands what must be touched gently. She comes when the heart has been too raw for too long. She comes when the soul has forgotten how to breathe. What symbols do we carry now? What do we wear on our bodies or keep in our homes to remind us of purification, of healing, of grief that is sacred? Most of us have forgotten. Our symbols have been emptied of meaning. Our rituals have grown thin. But Kebechet offers us a way back. She invites us to create again, to hold jars in our hearts, to honor the serpents in our stories, to recognize that transformation is not always grand. Sometimes it is slow, quiet, and wrapped in mourning. The serpent and the jar do not promise to erase pain. They promise to stay with it. They promise to witness, to bless, to transform. And in that, they offer us a new way to live. There is a silence that comes not from peace, but from erasure. It is the silence that follows when a name is no longer spoken, when a presence once revered is cast into shadow. It is the silence that clings to Qebechet. She was not erased by accident. She faded because her role was too gentle to survive in a world that favored spectacle over stillness. Her rituals were too intimate, her presence too quiet. As history turned its gaze to gods of power and judgment, the ones who comforted the grieving were left behind. The feminine divine has been forgotten in many traditions, but there is a particular kind of forgetting that happens to those who tend the dead. The mourners, the washers, the keepers of last rites. Their work is rarely written down. Their names are rarely carved into stone. Yet without them, the passage from life to death would be incomplete. Kebechet stands among them, a goddess not of conquest but of care. And because her work did not demand attention, it was allowed to fade. But forgetting is not the same as absence. She is still here. She waits in the corners. She waits in the grief that no one knows how to name. She waits in the hands that touch the dying with tenderness. She waits in the hearts of those who remember how to feel. The silence around her is not only historical, it is personal. How many times have we silenced our own sorrow? How often have we been told to be strong, to move on, to keep going, even when our hearts have shattered? In forgetting Kebechet, we forget part of ourselves. We forget the one who sits with us in the dark. We forget that care is sacred, that mourning deserves space, that there is holiness in washing a body, in lighting a candle, in weeping without shame. This kind of silence is heavy. It does not come from rest. It comes from being pushed away, buried beneath layers of noise and expectation. but it can be broken, not with noise, but with remembrance. By saying her name, by honoring her work, by allowing ourselves to slow down in the face of loss. There is power in naming what was silenced. There is healing in remembering the ones who were erased. To remember Kebechet is to resist the world's demand to rush grief. It is to reclaim the right to mourn. It is to honor the slow process of purification that does not happen on command. She does not force herself into view. She does not fight for her place. She waits for the soul to be ready. She waits for the one who will listen. And when that moment comes, her silence is not empty. It is full. It holds everything we were afraid to feel, everything we were told to hide, everything that still longs for rest. To break the silence is not to shout. It is to speak softly, to light a candle, to wash the face of the dead with love, to let the tears fall and know they are sacred. Qebechet may have been forgotten by history, but she has not forgotten us. She remembers. She watches. She waits. Grief is often misunderstood. It is treated as something to manage, something to get through, something to survive quietly and quickly. But in truth, grief is one of the oldest and most sacred forms of purification. It does not only mark what was lost, it cleanses what remains. Kebechet knew this. Her name was tied to the process of purification. Not just the physical act of embalming, but the spiritual act of release. She came to bring coolness not only to the body of the dead, but to the soul of the living. She came to ease the weight of sorrow, not by removing it, but by helping it flow. To purify something is to return it to its essence. It is to remove what is no longer needed so that what is true can shine again. Grief does this. It strips away what does not matter. It reveals what we love. It brings us back to what is real. There is no shortcut through grief. There is no ceremony that can erase it. But there are moments of clarity that come through it. Moments when we understand what it means to care deeply, to lose deeply, to live with open eyes and an open heart. Grief changes us. It removes what was once fixed. It washes away the false stories we told ourselves. It clears the mind, not with ease, but with honesty. It is a cleansing not of comfort, but of truth. Qebechet brings a coolness to this process. Her presence reminds us that grief, though painful, does not have to be violent. It can be tended. It can be softened. It can be allowed to move through the body like water, gentle and steady. In many cultures, purification involved water, fire, or smoke, a way to clear the spiritual space, a way to mark transition, a way to honor the shift from one state of being to another. Grief is much the same. It marks a threshold, a before and an after, and like all rites of passage, it needs witnesses, it needs care. To grieve is not to be broken, it is to be reshaped, not by force but by flow. Kebechet does not rush the process. She offers cool water, time, presence. She offers silence that holds rather than empties. She lets sorrow take its course. We do not speak of grief this way often enough. We are taught to fix it, hide it, silence it. But Kebechet invites us to feel it fully, to trust it, to let it wash over us until we are made new. This is not a cleansing of forgetting. It is a cleansing of remembrance. Grief leaves behind what matters most. It clarifies our love. It shows us who we are when the roles fall away. It brings us to our knees, and then it teaches us how to rise again. Grief is holy. It is not a flaw in the human experience. It is part of the ritual of being alive. When we honor it, we allow ourselves to be purified. When we carry it with presence, we are transformed. When we move through it with care, we meet ourselves anew. This is the grief that Qebechet blesses. This is the purification she knows. There is a kind of heat that grief brings. Not the warmth of comfort, but the burn of sorrow, the rising pulse, the racing thoughts, the tightening of the chest. Grief does not only make us cry, it overwhelms, it exhausts, it scorches the inside of the soul. That is why Qebechet does not come with fire. She comes with water, cool water, quiet water. Not to extinguish the flame, but to ease its pain. Not to erase the grief, but to soothe the body that carries it. The ancients believed that her waters brought freshness. They used the word coolness not in the modern sense of temperature alone, but as a feeling of calm after heat, a return to breath, a softening of what had become too sharp. The coolness of Kebechet's waters is not a dramatic flood. It is a gentle stream, a cloth pressed to a fevered brow, a sip of water when the throat is dry from weeping, a basin beside the bed where the grieving rest. She does not offer escape. she offers ease. In times of sorrow, we do not always need answers. Sometimes we need relief, something to carry us through the next breath, something to cool the fire that loss has lit within us. Kebechet offers that. She brings the kind of healing that does not demand change. She does not ask you to move on. She does not expect transformation. She comes to be with you exactly as you are. Her waters remind us that tenderness is a form of strength, that healing does not always look like progress. Sometimes it looks like pausing. Sometimes it looks like allowing. Sometimes it looks like sitting in stillness and letting the coolness reach where nothing else can. The body responds to grief in many ways. Sleeplessness, shaking, numbness, rage, fatigue. These are not failures. These are signals. They tell us that something deep within has been touched. Qebechet does not deny these signals. She meets them with compassion. Her water does not silence the pain. It holds it. It softens the edges. It allows the sorrow to be felt without drowning in it. In rituals of death and mourning, water was always present, to wash, to bless, to prepare. It was not only for the dead, it was for the living too. A way to mark the passage, a way to cleanse what could not be seen, a way to bring the coolness of sacred care. What would it mean to bring that water into your own life? What would it look like to let yourself be cooled when grief burns too hot? You do not need to be strong all the time. You do not need to hold yourself together when everything inside you is falling apart. The water is there. The softness is waiting. The coolness of her presence is still possible. To call on Kebechet is to ask for mercy, not a grand intervention, not a miracle, just the simple grace of breath, of stillness, of quiet water against aching skin. That is enough. That is sacred. Let the water come. Let it rest against your grief. Let it soothe what nothing else can reach. She is with you, and her waters are near. Death has been told through the voices of kings, warriors, and gods. It has been framed as conquest, as judgment, as a final reckoning. But there is another way to understand death, a quieter way, a way shaped by hands that do not strike but soothe. This is the way of the feminine. The feminine approach to death is not about force. It is about presence. It is about tending rather than taking, listening rather than commanding, holding space rather than controlling outcomes. It does not rush. It does not fear. It sits beside the bed. It stays long after the final breath. Kebechet is a reflection of this. She is not the one who weighs the heart or seals the tomb. She is the one who prepares, the one who comforts, the one who purifies with gentleness. She is part of a lineage of women who were once allowed to stand near death without shame. Priestesses, midwives, mourners, and keepers of sacred rites. In many ancient cultures, women led the rituals of death. They washed the bodies. They sang the laments. They carried the grief. They did not turn away. They were the bridge between the living and the dead, not in authority but in compassion. They made the threshold sacred. This work was not seen as small. It was holy. It was trusted. It was necessary. But over time, as power shifted and silence fell over the feminine divine, this role began to disappear. The sacred tasks of mourning became hidden. The presence of women at the edge of death was pushed aside. What had once been ritual became medical. What had once been held in the heart became managed behind closed doors. The feminine way of death was never about control. It was about connection. It was about staying with what others could not bear to feel. It was about naming the grief and honoring the transition. It was about love that did not end at death's door. Kebechet reminds us of this path. She invites us to reclaim it, not by recreating the past exactly as it was, but by remembering what it meant, to care, to tend, to hold the sacredness of endings. The feminine way of death is not exclusive to women. It is a posture of soul, a way of being present that belongs to anyone who chooses tenderness over fear. It is found in the quiet voice that speaks to the dying. It is found in the gentle hands that wash the body. It is found in the long nights spent sitting beside grief. This way does not need to be loud to be powerful. It does not need a title to be real. It is enough to show up. It is enough to feel. It is enough to bless what others avoid. Kebechet did not lead the soul into judgment. She led the soul into calm. She cleared the path. She cooled the pain. She stood at the edge and said, "This too is sacred." Let us remember this way. Let us reclaim the feminine face of death. Let us honor the softness that meets sorrow not with fear but with love. In doing so, we do not only restore Kebechet, we restore something in ourselves. Mourning is not a mistake. It is not a weakness to hide or a flaw to correct. It is an ancient expression of love, of loss, of reverence for what was real. Mourning is the way the heart speaks when it has been torn open. It is how we honor what mattered. In the world of Kebechet, mourning was not private shame. It was communal. It was sacred. It was expected. The cries of the mourners were part of the ritual. The scent of oils, the songs of lament, the weeping of women, these were not disruptions. They were offerings. Mourning was seen as part of the soul's journey, not just for the one who had died, but for those left behind. It allowed what was too big to stay inside to be released. It gave shape to sorrow. It gave time to the process of letting go. Today, mourning has been pressed into silence. We are expected to return to normal too soon. We are offered sympathy but not space. We are praised for being strong when we hold back our tears. We are given calendars, not rituals. But the body remembers what the soul was not allowed to express. The heart stores what the world refused to witness. And so mourning, when unspoken, becomes something that lingers, something that aches beneath the surface. Kebechet calls us back to a different way. She reminds us that mourning is not a detour. It is the path. It is part of purification. It is part of love. To mourn is to care deeply. It is to feel the echo of a presence that once shaped your world. It is to recognize that something has ended and that something within you is ending too. This deserves space. It deserves gentleness. There is no one way to mourn. It may look like tears. It may look like silence. It may look like walking through familiar places and noticing the absence. It may look like speaking a name into the stillness and letting your voice tremble. Every act of mourning is an act of reverence. Every tear a blessing. Every breath taken through sorrow a kind of prayer. In ancient rites, mourners were often given roles. They were seen as keepers of sacred energy. Their grief was not treated as disorder. It was treated as devotion. We can return to this view. We can let mourning be seen again as holy, not something to be rushed, but something to be honored. We can create space for remembrance. We can bring back the slow, the sacred, the still. Kebechet stands with those who mourn. She holds space without pressure. She allows the sorrow to rise and fall like water. She does not demand healing. She offers presence. There is sacredness in sitting with your pain. There is power in letting yourself feel it fully. There is grace in not pretending to be fine. To mourn is to be human. To mourn openly is to be brave. To mourn with ritual is to be connected to something timeless. Let mourning return to its place as a sacred act. Let it breathe. Let it flow. Let it carry you toward a deeper understanding of your own soul. And in that, may Kebechet walk beside you. Grief needs a container. Without shape, sorrow can become a weight that never moves. It lingers in the corners of the mind, in the body, in the quiet hours of the night. It calls for attention, but is rarely given the space it needs to speak. Ritual is the language of release. It gives grief a voice. It creates a sacred frame around what feels too large to hold. It does not fix pain, but it honors it. It does not erase sorrow, but it gives it form. Through ritual, we allow grief to move through us instead of staying locked within. In the world of Qebechet, rituals were part of every transition. The dead were not simply buried. They were prepared, anointed, wrapped, blessed. The living were not left behind without guidance. They mourned together. They purified themselves. They marked the change. These rituals did not make the pain disappear, but they made it sacred. They helped the soul feel seen. We have lost many of these practices. Death is often hidden. Grief is quieted. The rituals that once held us have grown thin, but they can be reclaimed. They can be reimagined. They can be made new, shaped by the same intention that guided Kebechet's gentle hands. A ritual of release can be simple. It can be private or shared. It can happen once or return again and again. What matters is not perfection. What matters is presence. You might light a candle and speak the name of the one you lost. You might write a letter and place it in water, letting the words dissolve. You might walk barefoot through a natural place and let the earth hold your sorrow. You might hold a bowl of water and pour it slowly, saying aloud what you are ready to let go. These are not empty gestures. They are acts of courage. They are moments of connection. They say, I remember, I honor, I release. Kebechet's presence can be felt in each of these moments. She blesses the water. She hears the words. She holds the silence. She brings the sacred into the ordinary. Ritual does not require belief in anything more than your own heart. It only asks that you show up with honesty, that you give your grief the dignity it deserves. There is no right way to do this. There is only your way, the way your soul needs to move, the way your body wants to remember, the way your love longs to be expressed. Grief that is not released becomes stuck. It hardens, it turns inward. But when we allow it to move, when we give it form and rhythm and reverence, it transforms. It becomes part of the story. It becomes part of the healing. You are not meant to carry everything forever. You are allowed to set things down. You are allowed to let go, not in forgetting, but in peace. Let your rituals be tender. Let them be slow. Let them be true. And in that space of release, may Kebechet be near. Long before the mind understands what has happened, the body already knows. It feels the absence. It senses the change. It carries the sorrow deep in its bones, in its breath, in the way it moves through space. Grief is not just an emotion. It is a physical experience. It is held in the shoulders, the chest, the jaw, the belly. It moves through the nervous system. It interrupts sleep. It stirs the heart. It slows the limbs. Often we speak of broken hearts and heavy chests without realizing that these are not just metaphors. They are truths. The body holds what the soul cannot yet say. Qebechet understood this. Her work was not just for the spirit. It was for the body too. She did not simply bless the soul for its journey. She washed the limbs. She anointed the skin. She cooled the places where heat had settled. Her presence was an act of care for the physical, not just the eternal. In many ancient rituals, the body of the dead was treated with reverence. It was washed, oiled, wrapped with tenderness. This care was not just symbolic. It was a recognition that the body had been a home, that it deserved love even in its stillness. And yet we do not always offer this care to the living, especially to ourselves. We carry our grief quietly. We sit up straight when we want to collapse. We smile when our bodies want to weep. We move on when our bones are still aching with loss. But the body remembers. It holds the tension. It absorbs the pain. It whispers in small ways. Tight muscles, shallow breath, restlessness, exhaustion. To walk with Kebechet is to listen to those whispers, to believe them, to treat the body as a sacred vessel of emotion, not just a machine to carry us forward. What if your body is not failing you, but trying to speak? What if the tiredness is wisdom? What if the tears are medicine? What if the stillness you crave is the prayer your soul cannot yet form in words? Grief lives in the body, and so healing must also begin there. You do not need to understand everything in your mind before you offer comfort to your body. You can place your hand over your heart. You can breathe deeply into your belly. You can stretch. You can cry. You can move slowly through your day as if every step is a small act of grace. These are not small things. They are sacred rituals. They are ways of purifying without force. They are ways of honoring the truth that your body already holds. Kebechet's cool water is not only symbolic. It is the touch we give ourselves when no one else knows what we need. It is the warm bath, the gentle breath, the moment of stillness in a world that keeps rushing. Your body is not a problem to solve. It is a messenger. It is a sanctuary. It is the place where grief has chosen to rest. Treat it with kindness. Treat it with reverence. Let it guide you gently back to wholeness. And may the memory of Qebechet remind you that your body too is sacred, even in sorrow, especially in sorrow. There is a transformation that can only happen through sorrow. It is not fast, it is not easy, but it is real. It is the slow turning of pain into wisdom, the quiet shaping of grief into clarity, the tender process of becoming something new after being broken. This is the alchemy of sorrow. Alchemy is often thought of as magic or myth, the turning of lead into gold, the secret process that takes what is heavy and dark and transforms it into something luminous. But this ancient idea is not just about metals, it is about the soul. Grief is the lead, heavy, dense, almost unbearable, but with time, presence, and care it can become gold. Not the glittering kind, not the kind that shines for others, the quiet gold, the kind that lives deep within, the kind that grounds you, the kind that makes you more whole, not less human. Kebechet stands within this transformation. She does not force it, she does not rush it, she witnesses it. She brings water to ease the heat of sorrow. She brings presence to hold the process. In her ancient role, she prepared the body, but beneath that she prepared the soul. She helped it begin the turning, from pain to peace, from loss to understanding, from what was to what now is. The alchemy of sorrow is not a straight line. It circles, it spirals, it repeats. One day the heart feels light, the next it is heavy again. This is not failure. This is how transformation works. It moves through layers. It honors every part of the journey. There is no final destination. There is only deepening. Grief does not leave us. It reshapes us. It teaches us what matters. It opens the door to truths we never expected to carry. You do not need to search for meaning too soon. You do not need to find the lesson while the wound is still open. But you can trust that sorrow does not arrive without purpose. It has something to offer, something that cannot be found in any other way. The world may tell you to get over it, to be strong, to smile again. But Kebechet tells a different story. She tells you to stay close to your own heart, to let the sorrow teach you slowly, to let the loss become part of your becoming. The alchemy is not in pretending you are fine. It is in allowing yourself to be changed. You are not who you were before, and that is holy. You carry grief not as a burden, but as a mark of your capacity to love. You carry sorrow not as a punishment, but as proof that something mattered. You carry memory not to stay in the past, but to bring what is beautiful with you into the future. This transformation cannot be forced, but it can be trusted. Let yourself grieve fully. Let yourself change. Let the gold emerge in its own time. And as you do, may Kebechet walk with you, not ahead, not behind, but beside you, with water in her jar and wisdom in her silence. There was a time when death was not handled by strangers. It was tended by priestesses, women who knew how to walk between worlds. Women who carried sacred knowledge, not in books but in their bodies. Women who anointed the dead and comforted the living. They were not feared. They were not hidden. They were trusted. Qebechet was one of them. She was divine, yes, a goddess, but she carried the same qualities that once lived in the hands of human women: steadiness, tenderness, sacred responsibility. She did not turn away from death. She did not pretend it was distant. She stepped into its presence with grace. The priestesses of old did the same. In temples and homes, they cared for the dying. They created space for mourning. They helped guide the soul from one form to another. They knew how to honor what was ending. They knew how to carry sorrow without fear. For many generations, these women were respected. Their roles were not questioned. Their wisdom was needed. But over time, that changed. The sacred became professional. The intimate became institutional. The priestess was pushed aside. She did not disappear. She was simply forgotten. But now something is shifting. A remembering is happening. The priestess is returning, not always in temples, not always in ritual robes, but in quiet ways, in everyday moments, in the way people are beginning to reclaim their grief, in the way women are learning to trust their knowing, in the way people are choosing to be present with death again, not as a failure, but as part of life. The priestess returns when someone sits with the dying and holds their hand. She returns when someone prepares a simple altar in memory of a loved one. She returns when someone lights a candle, whispers a prayer, or cries openly. She returns when someone chooses to honor sorrow instead of hiding it. This return is not loud. It does not need permission. It rises from the earth. It stirs in the body. It comes quietly, like Qebechet herself. To reclaim the priestess is not to perform a role. It is to embody a truth. It is to become someone who makes space for grief, who welcomes mourning as sacred, who tends to the brokenhearted without trying to fix them. You do not need to be trained. You do not need to know the ancient rituals by name. You only need to be willing to stay present, to honor the passage, to trust your tenderness. Kebechet does not ask for perfection. She asks for presence. She does not demand ritual. She invites it. She brings the spirit of the priestess into your hands, your breath, your care. The priestess returns every time we say yes to what is sacred in sorrow. Let her return through you. Let her voice rise in your silence. Let her touch move through your hands. Let her memory remind you that this path has always existed. It only waited to be remembered. And now it is rising again. Grief is sacred. It deserves a place of its own. Not a corner to be hidden in, but a temple where it can unfold slowly, fully, without shame. Temples are not always buildings. They are not always made of stone. Sometimes they are made of presence. Sometimes they are built in silence, in stillness, in the steady rhythm of breath and memory. Your grief needs such a place. It needs a temple that honors what you have lost and how deeply you have loved. Kebechet reminds us that even the smallest rituals can become sacred when done with care. A bowl of water, a whispered name, a single candle lit in the dark. These are not small things. They are offerings. They are foundations. They are the walls and altars of your personal temple. This temple does not need to be perfect. It does not need to be known to anyone else. It exists for you and your sorrow. It exists so that what you carry has a place to rest, so that your mourning does not become a burden held in silence, but a truth held in reverence. In your temple, there is no right way to grieve. There is only honesty. You may cry. You may sit in silence. You may sing. You may stay awake through the night. Whatever you feel is allowed. Whatever you need is welcome. You can create this space in your home. You can create it in your heart. You can return to it again and again, each time bringing with you whatever you are ready to release or whatever you still need to hold. Some bring photos. Some bring objects. Some bring only their breath. What matters is the intention, the pause, the willingness to say, "This matters. This hurt is sacred. This love continues." The temple of grief is not a place of despair. It is a place of presence. It is a place where sorrow can breathe. It is a place where healing does not mean forgetting, but remembering with tenderness. Qebechet walks the halls of such temples. She brings her cool water. She blesses the space. She kneels beside you as you mourn. She does not speak unless needed. Her silence is not empty. It is filled with understanding. We are told to move on, to be strong. But strength does not always look like endurance. Sometimes it looks like building a space where you can fall apart without fear. Sometimes it looks like making your own rituals when none are given. Sometimes it looks like lighting a single flame and letting it burn until your breath returns. Grief cannot be measured, but it can be honored. You do not need to be ready. You do not need to be whole. You only need to come as you are. The temple welcomes you. It was always meant to. Let your grief be held. Let it be blessed. Let it become something sacred. This is your temple, and Kebechet is already there. Some goddesses are never truly gone. Their names may fall into silence, their stories may be forgotten, but the essence of who they are continues to move through the world, waiting for someone to remember. Kebechet is one of these. She lives not in temples of stone, but in the quiet places where grief takes root. She lives in the water that cools a burning forehead, in the hand that touches the dead with tenderness, in the moment when someone allows themselves to mourn without apology. She lives in every act of care that honors sorrow as sacred. To say that Qebechet lives again is not just a return to myth. It is a return to presence, a return to the values she carried, a return to the way she walked gently through the realm of loss, blessing the broken, soothing the weary, offering stillness in a world that often refuses to stop. She lives again each time we remember that death is not the enemy, each time we create space for grief, each time we treat the human body as sacred, each time we allow ourselves to be changed by loss. Her story is not one of grand conquest. It is not filled with battles or triumphs. Her power is quieter. It is found in the slow rituals of preparation, in the soft wash of purification, in the choice to care when care is most needed. When we let her return, we make space for our own healing. She teaches us that we do not need to have answers. We only need to be present. We only need to witness what is real. We only need to bring water to the places that burn. Her wisdom is not abstract. It is embodied. It is lived. It is remembered in the way we move through grief with grace. Kebechet lives again in the sacred pause, in the ritual of lighting a candle for the dead, in the deep breath taken after a long cry, in the moment someone chooses to sit beside sorrow instead of turning away. She lives in those who tend to the dying, in those who honor the memory of the ones they lost, in those who do not rush healing, in those who recognize that purification is not about perfection, but about returning to what is essential. Her name may have faded, but her spirit never left. You are part of her remembering. You are part of her return. Each time you honor your grief, you carry her forward. Each time you comfort someone in mourning, you become her hands. Each time you create a space for sorrow to rest, you build her temple. Kebechet lives again through you. She lives in your rituals. She lives in your stillness. She lives in the quiet love you offer when words are not enough. She never needed a throne. She only needed to be seen. And now she is. Kebechet does not rush. She moves slowly, deliberately, with presence. In practice, give yourself permission to grieve at your own pace. Reject cultural pressure to move on quickly. Allow stillness to become part of your mourning. Even 5 minutes of quiet sitting with your sorrow can be sacred. Qebechet teaches that slowness is not weakness. It is reverence. As the goddess of purification, Qebechet invites us to care for our own bodies and spirits in grief. In practice, take ritual baths to release what you are holding. Wash your face slowly with intention, blessing yourself as you cleanse. Use scented oils or herbs that feel grounding to you. You may say softly, "May this water cool what burns. May this act be sacred. May I be held." Qebechet reminds you that purification is not about shame, it is about care. Qebechet lives in sacred spaces. You can create one in your home. In practice, dedicate a shelf, table, or corner to your grief. Place photos, candles, handwritten memories, or items that belong to your loved one. Sit there often, speak aloud, cry, pray, be still. This is where grief becomes ritual, and ritual becomes healing. Qebechet's waters move through the body. Your body carries the memory of your loss. In practice, practice body-based grief rituals. Walking in silence, stretching gently, placing your hand over your heart. Breathe into the places that feel tight. Let your tears come without judgment. The body holds what the heart cannot yet express. Qebechet invites you to listen. If you are supporting someone in their final days or honoring someone who has passed, channel Qebechet's presence. In practice, speak gently. Offer silence without trying to fix. Wash their face or hands if allowed. Light a candle. Whisper prayers. After death, honor their body, memory, and space with simple gestures. Death is not only an ending, it is a passage. You become the guide when you carry the water. Qebechet does not leave when things get hard. She arrives when others are gone. In practice, if someone you love is grieving, do not disappear. Sit with them. Listen. Offer water or warmth. If you are the one grieving, be the presence that stays with yourself. Offer your own company with compassion. Qebechet teaches that presence, not words, is what heals. Invoke her. Let her name become a mantra, a prayer, a comfort. In practice, whisper her name in the dark. Say it during ritual, bath, or mourning. Let it remind you that you are not alone in this. The sacred feminine is with you. Qebechet lives again when you remember her, and she walks with you when you call. Final reflection. Qebechet is not a goddess of outcomes. She does not offer escape. She offers a way to stay present. She brings water when there are no words. She brings breath when sorrow is too heavy. She offers calm in the middle of ache. To embody her is to become soft in the face of loss, to move slowly, to honor what has been, to bless what remains. She is not only ancient, she is alive in you. And now, as we come to the quiet end of this journey, let the story of Qebechet settle gently around you. Let it soften the spaces within you that have carried weight for too long. Let it cool the places that still burn with memory or longing or loss. You have walked through many rooms of this story. Some were ancient, filled with symbols and rites. Some were personal, shaped by your own breath, your own body, your own grief. And through all of it, Qebechet has moved beside you, silent, steady, patient, a presence made of water and night, a reminder that even the heaviest sorrow can be held with grace. In the old stories, she brought purification, not to erase what mattered, but to bless it. Not to forget what was lost, but to soothe what remains. Her water was never meant to wash things away. It was meant to cool the heart, to calm the spirit, to prepare the soul for whatever comes next. And so here, in this final moment, allow that same coolness to reach you. Allow the breath to soften. Allow the jaw to loosen. Allow the weight in the chest to slowly let go. Nothing is needed now. Nothing must be solved. You are simply resting in a quiet place where the sacred and the human meet. Let the waters of Qebechet surround you like a gentle tide. Let them pool around your feet. Let them rise to your hands. Let them fill the space around your heart with calm, steady presence. You are safe here. You are witnessed. You are not alone in your sorrow or your longing or your remembering. There is a temple within you, built from every moment you have survived. a place where grief can breathe, where tears are honored, where silence is a kind companion. This temple is yours to return to whenever you need it. Kebechet waits there, always, with her jar of water and her quiet blessing. And as you drift toward rest, let her presence become soft light around you. Let it cool the mind, let it slow the pulse, let it carry you gently into stillness. You have walked far enough for now, you have felt enough for today. Let the night hold you, let the waters soothe you, let sleep come slowly and kindly like a long exhale. Kebechet watches over this place. You can let go, you can rest, you can enter the quiet. The journey continues, but for now, there is only peace, only breath, only the soft blessing of cool water in the dark. Sleep well. You are held,